have a confession to make. I really like the original Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movies. Now, I know most of you just threw up and are absolutely clicking away from this video or typing yourself a hate comment here, but hold up, hold up, hold up. Before you absolutely lose your minds, let's talk about it. Now, I know that these films are absolutely nowhere near a close adaptation to the originals, but to me, they're fun. I enjoy them. I like them. And I'm sure part of it is the fact that I didn't get into Resident Evil until I was in high school. I'm not one of those people that grew up at the age of 5 playing it on the original console. No. I struggled a lot with horror games and horror films and just all horror content in general when I was younger. Ironic, I know, given my username, but whatever. And I got into the franchise after experiencing the characters through Marvel vs. Capcom 3 of all things. I absolutely fell in love with their designs and reading their backstories that the game had supplied, and wanted to know more. I wanted to play their games, and while I was Googling around, I saw that Jill Valentine was teased to be in the next Resident Evil movie, the 5th one, and I was intrigued. So I looked more into the films and even also discovered the novels by S.D. Perry and fell in love with the franchise. Of course, after, watching the movies and reading the books, I got into physically playing the games. But not just the novels, but these movies highlight something really important and wonderful about video game film adaptations. And that's introduction. Putting a pin on it, we'll get back to that point later. Now, this video isn't going to be an extensive history of every film and video game adaptation. No, rather just I'm making a few points here because I see a lot of the same complaints crop up constantly from video game fans whenever the new film adaptation's coming out. And granted, some of them are valid, like cough, cough, Chris Pratt voicing Mario. But sometimes it's just really annoying. Now, this is something that I talk about a lot during my Twitch live streams, so you know what? To save myself the breath, we're gonna make a YouTube video about it. Happy 2022. Woo frickin' who. So, the first thing to point out when doing a film adaptation of a video game is how completely different the two mediums are. You're taking a 40 to 60 hour immersive experience and turning it into a 2-hour at max sit at home film. It's different. There's a difference in hours, there's a difference in feel, there's a difference in how literally everything is conveyed. Granted, they're both visual mediums, so yeah, it's a little bit different than taking a 600-page novel and then turning it into a movie, but in a way, it's almost harder because there are certain things that work best as a film and things that work best as a game. Granted, the two mediums can lend things from each other. There are certainly video games that are far more cinematic and other video games that are very, very much more interactive. But let's take Death Stranding, for example. Death Stranding is a game that I absolutely adore. It's a game that got a lot of criticism for how quote-unquote cinematic it feels and how the first 2 hours of gameplay are pretty much cutscenes. Of course, Hideo Kojima created a very complicated world and it needed a lot of exposition, let's face it. I mean, it's a game that still needed exposition as you went along, but again, I absolutely fell in love with. But part of the reason why Death Stranding excels is because it's a video game. Going back to that 40 to 60 hour mark, you gain, what's the word I'm looking for? attachments, bonds through these 40 hours of talking and experiencing these other characters' stories, through the slog of just walking through the expansive maps, things like that, yada yada yada. I don't need I keep going more, otherwise this will just turn into a Death Stranding video, I swear. I mean, the same thing can be said about something like Mass Effect, a very choice-based game. Catherine, another game that lends itself to choices and, picking which girl's best, and puzzles. These are games that can be very cinematic and have very expansive stories, obviously Mass Effect being much more expansive than Catherine, for example, but very story-heavy, that succeed the most as video games. Granted, at the time of filming this, there have been announcements of a Mass Effect TV series, and I'm very excited. And also, again, even more cinematic games that are like the Dark Pictures anthologies or Until Dawn are better as video games because of how expansive those choices can be. That's the beauty of video games, are choices and agency. The feelings that you get from video games, granted, yeah, you feel sad from both video games and film, but they're different kinds of sadness because of action and choice and just physically playing and tapping buttons as opposed to just sitting and watching a movie. Again, I'm not putting down film and cinema, no. I'm just highlighting how different the two mediums are. And frankly, it's something that a lot of video game fans kind of tend to forget when we're looking at video game to film adaptations. Now, personally, I do believe that video game to TV show adaptations tend to be a little bit better. You have a lot more time to fully expand into the world and hit on everything. I mean, look at how wonderful the Witcher games are. Granted, those were originally books, but I think part of what makes that series so strong is the fact that it is a show. You have 6 hours, 7 hours of content as opposed to just 2 hours to shove such an expansive universe and complicated character history into. Sometimes things that work as a video game don't work as a movie. Let's take a look at the Assassin's Creed movie with Michael Fassbender. You know what? Yes, I am going to be defending it because I love Michael Fassbender and I really actually enjoyed the movie. The way that the Animus, the fictional machine that lets you traverse time through your genetic bloodlines and all that fun stuff, that's described as like a VR headset. You're lying down, you're experiencing the games, but obviously that's not exciting as a movie. So let's make a really funky ass machine that makes your body do all the cool flippy shit that you're doing in, the past in your mind. It's just, there are certain things that work better in a film versus a game. You have a lot more leniency in a game with, certain things like VR headset versus parkour machine. In a movie, you're looking at all visuals, essentially. I mean, obviously sound and, other things come into play, but you have you gotta keep the audience engaged, essentially. You gotta make things exciting. Now, to me, we're gonna start talking about Resident Evil again. I didn't really like the new Welcome to Raccoon City movie. I know, I really shouldn't have opinion after talking about how much I liked the Milla Jovovich movies. Granted, this final chapter, I will admit, was not the best. It was a little disappointing, but you know what? That's its own thing. I was kind of disappointed by Welcome to Raccoon City. And trust me, I went in with low expectations. I was not someone that was pissed off about the casting. Frankly, I thought all of the actors did an amazing job. I thought a lot of the visuals were really great. I think it fell short because of the writing. They tried to push too much into one film. They combined 2 games into one, and frankly, 2 games whose plot lines don't really overlap that well. If you're going to combine 2 Resident Evil games, you should be combining Resident Evil 0 with Resident Evil 1, or Resident Evil 2 with Resident Evil 3. By combining Resident Evil 1, for those of you who don't know Resident Evil 1 takes place over the course of what's known as the Mansion Incident. And Resident Evil 2 is your very stereotypical zombie apocalypse taking place over the course of Raccoon City. Now, combining a very small setting with a very large setting, it really felt like no setting, or frankly even each character, got enough time to shine. I didn't feel the desperation. I didn't feel the claustrophobia of each setting. I didn't really get the time to experience each setting. It just felt like we had, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. A lot of the movie just felt like fan service.
An additional note that I'm looking back on now that I'm in the editing stage, I think it's important to create a good story. When you focus so much on this from the game, that from the game, it feels like it's just a bunch of copy-pasted little tiny things that don't flow well together. That from the outside, from a trailer's perspective, or from an Easter egg, little look at all this, it's nice. But when you look at it as a whole, it's kind of lacking. And honestly, I think that was one of my biggest problems with the Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City film.
That was something that they touted in all of the press, was just, this is for the fans, we put this in for the fans. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot about this movie I liked. Again, I liked the actors, and I liked a lot of like the little tiny Easter eggs here and there. I thought it was exciting. There was a lot that I really did enjoy. I thought the actor who played Leon Kennedy was fantastic. I didn't hate this version of Jill. I thought the actress was great. Loved this Chris. Oh my gosh, what a fantastic Chris. But again, the writing. Yeah, you're giving me all these great little Easter eggs and this nice visual of the Spencer mansion, but it felt like they just kind of messed with the balance of certain things by making certain characters more evil than others and somehow watering down the evilness of one of the most iconic villains in the franchise. Just, it messed with a balance that I just didn't vibe with. That when we got to the after credit scene with another character who was kind of missing through the whole series, the whole movie, suddenly that character's dynamic was absolutely off in comparison to another character who had been changed a lot in the film. But I'm trying to be as spoiler-free as possible, okay? It's my opinion. And what's so funny to me is there's a lot of people who really hated the original Paul W.S. Anderson films, but loved this one. And you know what? It's opinion. At the end of the day, a phrase that just is not great. What matters is how much you enjoyed it, and what matters is whether or not this movie can get new fans into the franchise. To me, I saw Welcome to Raccoon City as just like a fun movie to watch with my friends when I'm drinking and when I'm not just like actively paying attention to it. Because yeah, there was a lot that I didn't like, and that's okay. There's also a lot that I really did enjoy. I think something that video game films, the better video game films do, is that they kind of create their own story. For example, Assassin's Creed, the Sonic movie, etc., etc., etc. The stronger video game to film adaptations are ones that do different things. The Assassin's Creed movie took a new storyline. They didn't adapt Delson's story, which, yeah, I can understand that's frustrating to really long-time Assassin's Creed fans, but they didn't have to deal with being compared the entire time. The Sonic movie was its own story. Didn't have to deal with being compared the entire time. Granted, of course, comparisons are being made, like character design and things like that, but as long as the aesthetic and theme, and frankly, the character dynamics remain fairly faithful, I think that's kind of a win. I mean, look at the original Mortal Kombat movies. Yeah, they are littered with their own fair share of problems, but they sure do feel like Mortal Kombat. I mean, and it's very poignant to state, wouldn't it be boring if everything was exactly the same? Like, wouldn't you be bored if you knew exactly how everything was going to happen? A great example of this is the newest Tomb Raider movie. Now, I love the Tomb Raider reboot games, absolutely adore them. I think they're freaking wonderful. And the new Tomb Raider movie was so good. But in a way of keeping out spoilers, the plot twist of the original Tomb Raider game of that series was that a certain character who was thought to be good was actually evil. And the movie version took that same character who was thought to be in that version was thought to be evil. Turns out she was actually good and a victim. And also, let's face it, the acting performances of that movie, phenomenal. But, sidebar. And that's a great example of something that's as pretty close and similar as you can get, while also being different. I was shocked and amazed while watching the movie. I had a blast. An absolute blast. So, a few changes here and there are good. It's just really depends upon how many changes you're willing to put up with. Alright, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this, why I'm making this long-winded video. First off, thanks for making it this far. I think the strength of video game films are in bringing new fans into the fold. I mean, look at my Resident Evil story. I was probably never going to get into Resident Evil, at least at where I was at that point in my life, until I discovered those films. And I'm not gonna lie, those series, both the films and the games, definitely helped me figure some things out in terms of bisexuality. Just saying. That to me is the power of a video game to film adaptation. I mean, the same can be said about comic book movies, getting people into Marvel Comics and DC Comics. It can be said about books, things like that. So many people have watched the film before reading the book or reading the comic or watching the show or whatever have you. And that to me is okay. I'm not gonna gatekeep. And granted, I never played Monster Hunter a day before in my life, but I knew visual keys to that game because of friends and social media people that I follow that have cosplayed it or have talked about it and played the games. So yeah, I was able to notice Easter eggs like the amazing cat cooking scene and things like that. But other than that, I was new. But as soon as we finished watching the Monster Hunter movie, I literally pulled up my Steam account and bought the newer Monster Hunter game. That movie did what it was supposed to do. It got me to buy the game. Granted, it's still sitting in my backlog and it's something I do plan on getting to eventually, but I'm actively excited to play it. I was never going to touch the Monster Hunter series. I'm not going to lie. It just wasn't something that interested me. But after watching the movie and, enjoying it, hell yeah, I want to play that game. I want to cook with cats. I want to slay a giant monster. Heck yeah. And that is the point. It's not about pleasing video game fans, because guess what? You can never 100% please video game fans. They are the pickiest biznitches out there. Myself included, you know what? But I think it's important to take a step back and find the little things that you can enjoy. Of course, at the time of filming this, the new Borderlands movie does not have a trailer. All we have is a cast list and some silhouettes, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm nervous about it. There are changes being made that I'm not happy about. But you know what? I'm gonna start practicing what I preach. I'm gonna go in with low expectations and hope that I can enjoy it, and hope that this'll get new people into the franchise. That's the most I can hope with the new Welcome to Raccoon City Resident Evil movie. Yeah, it's not my Resident Evil movie, but it's gonna be somebody's. And I hope that it's a movie that gets them to try out this absolutely amazing game franchise. Not every video game film can be a Sonic. Not every video game film can be Detective Pikachu, or The Witcher, or the newer Tomb Raider, whatever have you. Sometimes having little moments of enjoyment and getting new people into the franchise is the most that you can hope for, and you know what? Damn it, that's good enough for me. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that y'all got something out of my rambles. And thank you so much for making it to the end of this little video and rant of mine. I really appreciate it. Please, let's start a discussion in the comments. What are your guys' thoughts on the new upcoming Uncharted movie or the new Borderlands movie? Are there video games that you would like to see as films? Personally, I hate to say it, but I'd love to see a Bioshock film or Alice Madness Returns or Plague Tale or something like that. I think those games could actually do really well as film, and frankly, also I want more people to play them. So if it takes a movie to come out to get more people to play those games, heck yeah. Or on the other side of the coin, are there games that you really, really don't want to see as a film? I mean, and now this is something that I posed to my Discord community a little while back, and some people were like, yeah, I'd love to see this or that, or I hated this and I hated that. And I thought it was a very interesting and great conversation, and frankly provide a little bit more context and research for me while I was putting together this video. So yeah, let's talk about it. And if you do want to check out my community Discord or my Twitch streams or cosplay or whatever have you, I'm going to post my link tree below in the video description. So thank you again so much for listening to my nonsense. And yeah, I hope you decide to stick around and subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, I hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. Take care.